Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's speaker is Dale Wade. Dale has been involved in prescribed fire and forest management research for more than 40 years and spent most of his career as a fire behavior scientist at the U.S. Forest Service Southern Research Station. Dale is a charter member of the International Association of Wildland Fire, the Longleaf Alliance, and the Georgia Prescribed Fire Council. He served as an instructor for federal and state training courses, has received numerous honors and awards, and has over 140 publications. Since retiring in 2002, Dale has continued to be involved in the fire community through his consulting work. So we're very excited to have Dale share his knowledge and experience with us today. And with that, let's let Dale get started.
Thank you, Annie. For those of you that really don't know me, my fire experience goes back to Southern California. 1957, I believe, when I started back there as straw boss on a shotgun crew. I picked up a few degrees on the way and been in the South since 1965. Just to let you know that I do know a little bit about smoke, I believe I was on the scene about 1968 when we took the first look at smoke management down in the South. Bob Lamb, Darrell Ward hung a few fly paper strips over a burn of mine and see what kind of fly ash they'd catch. We've certainly come a long way from then, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the upcoming slides that I show you. We've got three pretty simple objectives. I'm assuming you're all experienced burners, and thus I've included very few definitions or how-to discussions of various models. But I urge all burners to use a smoke screening system, but I do think their use is pretty straightforward, so I don't discuss them either. In my view, most of the problems we have today are not fire escapes, but are smoke related. And I think likely because winds typically change throughout a burn, they're dependent on topographical features, and because we burners often underestimate the amount of smoke, especially water vapor, that we're going to produce. I think smoke management is a must. The woods are going to burn, and we just need to continue to show the public that we can do a better job than nature can when it strikes the match. It's as simple as that. Wildfire doesn't consider human values. To that, wildfire structures are just more fuel. So our message should be geared to the fact that we're doing a better job. I don't believe the public is really interested. Well, the public is really interested in their own protection. So they don't want to hear about benefits of fire from an ecological standpoint. They want to know how it's going to protect them. And we need to gear our message to that. The problem is that the importance that we place on smoke management is an individual decision. And we can fudge a lot if we choose to. And it's a difficult decision to plow out a burn that is accomplishing our objectives just because a smoke problem arises that our ancestors would not even have thought twice about. But that's not the case anymore. Public perception is our reality, and we'd better not lose sight of that fact, especially as the wildland-urban interface continues to metastasize. We've got to continually and consistently demonstrate we are professionals who can do the task at hand with minimum impact on the public, and that's a relationship that takes a long time to develop, and every time we screw up and make a mistake, we jeopardize that relationship. Every burn we conduct is going to be judged by the public. So we want them to give us all A pluses. And we want to be doing the right thing, even if it's going to cost us more money to do it. It's really that simple. There's just three underlying principles, and we all can do it. Use common sense, have a little integrity, and cover your butts. I wish we didn't have to include the third one, but some folks out there will sue every chance they get, and they don't agree with using fire, so they're looking for an opportunity to shut us down. Basic objectives of any smoke management plan are to keep smoke away from ex-urbanites, and that's kind of difficult. And that's the public sector we need to target for education, but it's a hard sell until they are actually impacted by a wildfire. And when that happens, we do have their momentary attention, and we should take advantage of that opportunity. When we're burning at the interface, we do need to mop up completely every day. We learned the hard way in Florida that we could burn about 25 acres a week. And if we burn that 25 acres on Monday, we'd have complaints for the rest of the week while we were mopping up. But if we actually subdivided those blocks into roughly 5-acre size, we could burn and mop up each day, and all we got was thank yous and compliments at the end of the week and no complaints, and that's what we're looking for. How would you feel if you pulled up into the school parking lot, or for that matter, a hospital parking lot, and you look out your front window and that's what you got? You wouldn't be a happy camper, especially if that was smoke was from a prescribed fire. We need to map and identify and then map all the smoke sensitive areas that we're going to have in our potential impact area and put that on a map and make that map part of a written plan that I believe we should have for every fire. We also need to know whether those areas are prone to fog or not, and call to your local fire agency, your state fire agency will let you know that. And basically what we need to do is just simply select the wind direction so the plume does not come anywhere near those smoke sensitive areas. This is just to let you know that I say it's easy, but there's always something that's likely to pop up that's unexpected. If you were conducting a backing fire here, you'd have a low rate of fire line heat exchange, and you probably your smoke would be drifting off to the left. If you were conducting a higher intensity fire, your smoke column would rise higher, and it would probably be going off to the north. Luckily, a situation like this one does not normally occur during good prescribed fire conditions. You have to recognize that the models we use to predict smoke transport and dispersion, they're a lot better than they used to be, but this is not an exact science. And when you're burning around county airports, and there's certainly a lot of them out there, you need to work with those folks, because you sure don't want to put a pilot onto instrumentation when he's not really comfortable with that. He'd much rather use visual. And you need to make sure that if you do have duff or peat, or really deep duff or peat, you need to make sure that those areas are not going to burn. The easiest way to do that is have the water table up pretty close to the surface. Now, I do agree that there are times when you might want to burn that particular type of fuel, and in that case, you got a smoke management challenge ahead of you. Hopefully nobody does this anymore. Windrows are just, you just don't want to do it. There's a couple of reasons. If you had a wildfire back there before you touch these off, you'd have a problem with the tractor plow unit. It couldn't go over, to have to go around them. All your topsoil is probably in that windrow now instead of on the ground where it used to be spread out. And it's also an impediment to wildlife. Much better is to construct smaller circular piles. Make sure you do it when they're dry, and wait till that material is cured before you do pile it. And once it's piled and you've got it ignited and it's burning, you can bump it with whatever piece of equipment you have out there to kind of push it in. And they generally burn out within the day, and you're not going to have a smoke problem that night. Sometimes, rather than piling, we just broadcast burn a clear cut. This is a burn we conducted back, gosh, I don't know, 1968 or something like that. I have no idea what the mixing height was. We didn't measure them back then, but it was obviously too low. You can see that the smoke box there on the right of your screen is filling up, and we actually did smoke in US 1, and about the only thing we had time to do was call the highway patrol and get them out there before it actually got smoked in. They weren't happy, but at least we prevented some accidents from happening. Just a little brief digression into the basics here. Flaming combustion, your major products are carbon dioxide, water, and volatile organic compounds, both solids and gases. And the more inefficient the burning, the more soot and tar are going to be produced, and those are the effluents that carry some pretty nasty stuff in them. Head fires are going to produce about 3 times more particulate than backfires, so we tend to use backing fires whenever we are upwind from a smoke-sensitive area. Smoldering combustion, temperatures are much lower, and we get lots of nasty byproducts. You get a lot more smoldering behind head fires than you do behind backfires, so again, backfires are generally the technique of choice. Smoldering emissions about twice those than we get from a flaming phase. Reducing emissions production directly related to consumption, fuel moisture, and the combustion phase, and we're going to chat just a little bit about each of those. And you can notice here, there is smoke behind that flame front, but not an awful lot. First thing you want to do is reduce your smoke production. The way you do that is burn when fuels are dry. And you want to limit or prevent ignition of large fuels and deep duff, and the way to do that is just make sure they're too damp when you're burning so that you don't have that problem. And that's going to help minimize smoldering combustion as well. And you want to start mop up pretty darn quick instead of standing around after the firing and congratulating yourselves and then deciding, well, it's about time we thought about it. It should be a definite part of your fire plan. Next thing we want to do is, once we've got the smoke in the air, we want to disperse it and dilute it. You don't want to fudge any of these. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got logging debris you're burning, your mixing height probably should be a lot higher than 1,700 feet. And in the summers, that's not hard to do, but in the winter, it might be hard to come up with a mixing height much above 2,500 or 3,000 feet. I hope all of you know wet fuels produce lots of smoke. And Most of what you're looking at here is white, which means it's water vapor. It's not a pollutant, but as you all know, it sure can have a devastating effect on visibility. And some of you may not know, we keep advocating the use of backfires because they produce less smoke, and that's true. However, as you can see from this picture, that's pretty low intensity backfire, and we got a heck of a lot of white smoke. So basically, it's mostly water vapor, and this occurs when we use a backing fire a day or two after a frontal passage with rain, and the top of the surface is dried off enough to carry the fire, but as soon as you get down half an inch or so, you got a lot of moisture. It hasn't drained out yet. So uh, what I would do different here the next time would just wait another day before I burned it. And we can sure burn when things are really moist and put a head fire through there. But we can also create what's known as super fog. And in a burn like this, you just aren't going to you're not going to meet your objectives. It isn't going to happen. It's a waste of time, and you're looking for downwind smoke problems. You also have to be thinking about your crew. One of the things I learned over the years is you stand out there in the smoke long enough and you are going to get a headache from breathing in too much carbon monoxide. Now you want to rotate your people in and out of the burn. And also, use the buddy system. Watch out for each other. And you know your crew, and you can tell if they're not doing too well. And if they're not, get them out of the smoke. Residual smokes. Ah, yes. Nobody likes mop up because it's a dirty, time-consuming job, but it is important. Residual smoke is that smoke that's not entrained to the convection column, which means it's near the ground and it's going to follow cold air drainage. I always start with snags and then do the stumps and do the duff last unless I've got some old growth present. If I've got old growth in there, their feeder roots can be right up there in the lower duff, and you'll cook them. So in that case, I reverse the order and I put the duff out first, and then do the snags and the stumps last. I won't say most, but an awful lot of our residual smoke problems are caused by rotten logs that we ignite. The problem is if we don't burn them this time, they're going to be there next time, so it's kind of a pay me now or pay me later thing. However, there are some steps you can take to reduce the chance of those igniting, and one of those is to use a head fire, which is probably contrary to what you might expect. They're cooler near the ground, and you can use them under damper conditions, so they're less likely to ignite that woody debris in the first place. One of the problems we worry about all of our residual smoke is that nighttime inversions are pretty darn common in the southeast, and that they continue to deepen through the night. And you just don't want that kind of a problem, especially if you're near any kind of a residential area. However, I like to burn at night. There are a lot of advantages to it, but I won't do it unless the predicted wind speed, and that surface wind speed, by the way, is greater than 5 miles an hour, and the nighttime dispersion index is at least 6, and that's on the coastal plain. If you're in the mountains, you got a different problem because you've got really good drainage down into the valleys every night. So it's tough to burn the mountains at night. You also want to make sure that the predicted difference between the dew point and your minimum nighttime temperature is going to be at least 5 degrees. But all that said, Maybe some of you were burning last week. We had a heck of a good opportunity last week. Amazingly high nighttime dispersion indexes, up around 30, which is almost unheard of. And you need to take advantage of those when you can. As it's kind of a no-brainer, common sense. The blue line is just total number of accidents in Florida during a particular 4-year period. And the yellow is the number of those where the investigating trooper said that there was either smoke or fog. And uh, guess what? Most of them happened during the early morning commute. Another reason we need to be really careful about our residual smokes and do a good job on mopping up. We have several tools to help us. I strongly recommend using a smoke screening system. There's fire behavior and consumption models out there, none of which I really like. I don't think any of them are reliable, but that's a topic for another day. But we've got smoke models out there that are pretty good. And I put a few links here that you can go to. And of course, I'm sure there's links at other states and other sites, including the Southern Forestry Exchange, where you've got good smoke management information. All you have to do is click on it. One of the tools that I do use every time I burn is Lavorie, the Low Visibility Occurrence Risk Index. If I'm burning near the interface, though, I put down 7 here. But if I'm near the interface, I want that Lavorie index down around 4 or less before I really feel comfortable. Another tool I always use is the Dispersion Index. It's available on a lot of southern state websites, and it's part of their daily forecast, so use it. And if you've got a reading above 40, you're probably home free on most burns unless you've got really heavy fuels. However, the higher the dispersion index, the better dispersion and the better fire you're going to get. So you could get a control problem as it gets real high, and we usually recommend at about 65 you think about whether you want to burn another day or burn that day because of your inability to stop the fire at the downwind edge. Theoretically, if I was still working for the Forest Service, I would not be able to burn when the index was less than 40. However, if you got a couple acres of an annual fuel, particularly pasture or something like that, it's going to do just fine with a dispersion index anywhere over 20, and you're not likely to have a smoke problem. However, if you lit it, it's your fire, and you need to be responsible for whatever happens, so you need to be sure that you're not going to have a problem if you're going to fudge a little on that one and burn when it's less than 40. And there is a big difference between how the dispersion index is calculated during the day and at night. So if you're thinking of burning at night, this isn't the dispersion index you use. You need to calculate the nighttime dispersion index. If you're lucky enough to be in a state that has a dedicated fire meteorologist like Florida or Georgia, they'll be happy to do that for you or assist you. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it yourself. When we're using backfires, we do cut the particulate in half, but you got to remember backfires take a lot longer to conduct unless we use interior lines. And during that time, there's more risk of a change in wind direction. So it's a question of whether you want it quick and dirty or spread it out over a longer time and take a chance that the winds might change. The smoke tool that I always use is PBPD. It isn't going to tell you anything about your smoke column, but it's a heck of a good tool for residual smoke. I personally have found it to be infallible. Its developer, Gary Achtermeyer, will tell you that any model is by definition a model and is going to give you predictions, not facts, and thus it is doomed to fail sooner or later. But I've had really good luck with PBPD, and you can download meteorological data and run it for 24 hours out to see what it's going to look like before you light the match, which is a real plus. We need to remember that nature is not governed except by obeying her, and we have a hard time with that when we keep thinking that we're in charge. And you also need to keep in mind that these areas are going to burn, and as we get more humans out there, we're going to have more accidental fires. And wildfires will occur at the wildland urban interface, and that wildfire could care less where it's going. It's going because of the wind and the fuels, and it's not going to pay any attention to human values because they have nothing to do with nature. We apologize. This slide just did not load up today, so I'm winging it here. And we're not going to talk about the 1880 census, which shows that a heck of a lot of the developed areas actually were burning more than 10% of the time. If you do want to see this slide, you can look at Mark Melvin's 2012 publication on the 2011 survey that was done, and I think I've got a link for him later on in here. But anyway, basically, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking 60% of the area in the United States burned at least every 35 years, and an awful lot of that burned at least every 10 years. So there's a lot of fire out there, and there has been for hundreds of years, and it's not going to change. We're currently treating about 6.5 million acres in the South for forestry purposes, and another 4 million for ag. Nationwide, we burned around 20 million acres in 2011, and that's a heck of a lot of acreage to be burning, but it isn't anywhere near what we need to. In the South, we ranked, well, let me get to that slide before we talk about that. How about that? We need to be burning around 50 million acres per year. But these burns are getting more expensive because a lot of them are around the urban interface. And as you all know, agency fire budgets are down the drain. And I don't know if it's ever going to get any better or not. During that 2011 survey, which incidentally every state responded to, so what you're looking at here is the combined response of all 50 states of why they're not using prescribed fire to treat more acres. Number one on every region was capacity, and that has to do with humans. We don't have enough experienced burners. We don't have the training opportunities to get them experienced. Second one is weather. Third one nationally is air quality. In the South, that wasn't the third. In the South, that was rated number 4. And we rated liability higher. That's probably because in the South, an awful lot of our forested lands are owned by private individuals rather than agencies, and so they have to provide their own protection. There's a blue ribbon panel and the website that you can access. And actually, I do recommend you access that. It's kind of got some good data in it. 80% of the communities that they determined were at risk in 2008 were in the South. And I believe that was a total out of, I believe it was 50,000 communities. So 40 some odd thousand were in the South. And no wonder we have our problems getting burns conducted in the South. But as Steve Pine said, if we don't manage those fuels, nature's going to do it for us. And I wish this wasn't the scene so often, but it is. But when those folks are faced with a situation like this is an opportunity for us. We can work with the leaders of those communities and involve them in our planning to show them that we can do a better job than wildfires at protecting them. Nationwide in 2007, over 5,000 structures were burned, were destroyed. That's up from just a couple hundred in the 90s. And this is an average. Some years we do a much worse job than in other years protecting them. And you can see that this house, I'm telling you, this house did not ignite from the flame front. It ignited because of debris on the roof. And it's just one of those things. You got to protect your own property and pay attention to Firewise. $800 million a year, 1990 to 2000. That's a pretty good chunk of money. And you can imagine it's a heck of a lot worse now than it used to be. And one of the problems is if the insurance companies can get away with it, they're spreading that out over all of the policyholders, which is punishing those of us that are more prudent. So we need to try to convince insurance companies not to do that, and also to allow them to give discounts to those people that do buy into Firewise and try to lower the risk on their individual properties. Just a little historical chat here as we go. This happens to be 1940. Here's 1970. Here's the year 2000. And no wonder we have our challenges cut out for us trying to burn around these. For those of you that don't use metric, 1 kilometer is around 250 acres. So the red areas have somewhere between 60 and 128 houses per kilometer or every 250 acres. So there's still a lot of wildland interspersed in there, even though it looks red. As Abe Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. If it's on our side, we can succeed. If we don't get it, we're peeing into the wind and it just isn't going to happen. In the end, the public is going to decide whether we can use prescribed fire or not. This particular slide shows you that we can do it and do it well. Happens to be a really upscale subdivision down in Florida, St. John's Water Management District. Aerial ignition, those little vehicles you see on that road there are golf carts. Everybody came out to watch the burn. And St. John's had a heck of a time selling these folks on the use of prescribed fire until a wildfire came through. Wasn't long after that they were calling folks at St. John's and wanting to talk to them about the use of prescribed fire, and they jumped on it, and it's been a really good relationship. And folks will do nothing to jeopardize that. If there's any hint of a change in the wind direction, they'll plow that fire out no matter what it costs. each of us needs to take every opportunity to talk to the public when we're prescribed burning. And it helps if we've got if we look professional, if we've got good equipment that's in good working order and look sharp. I always like to involve local fire departments in a burn like this. And it's not that we're going to use their structural engines, but the public doesn't know that. And if they see folks standing around out there like they're prepared, that's a big plus for us, and it pays big dividends. And it also gives your rural fire departments experience with prescribed burning, which is entirely different, as you know, than structural fire control. I wish I didn't have to have this slide in here, but I do. Sometimes, no matter what we do, we have a bad outcome. And it's generally because of a unpredicted change in the weather. And it can cause a lot of injury and structural damage. And we need to be able to be protected. If we're doing everything by the book and we have a good written plan and we have followed it, we shouldn't be held responsible for a change in the weather that was beyond our control. If you look at the bottom line, we're doing a better job than nature would do if they tried to burn. You want to work with your local fire council, and by the way, if you don't have one in your state, think about forming one. It's a great way to share experience, successes, as well as mistakes and problems, and we can learn from those and do a better job in the future. This happens to be a map that shows those states that have an established fire council. Some of them, like Florida, have more than one, and some states are developing them. I really do strongly urge you to look into forming one, and if you got one in your state, attend a meeting. You'd be amazed at what takes place. It's really a good group of folks that are trying to do the right thing. And I finished. Annie, I actually finished on time. So if anybody has any questions, if you'll put them in the chat box, we'll try to answer them.
Great, thank you, Dale. Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions and comments. So as Dale said, go ahead and enter those into the chat pod on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and, Dale, I'm going to put your email in the chat pod in case anybody is going to be leaving early and has additional questions for Dale. I think he's open to having you email him, so his address is provided there for you.
I do think that I assume you're going to upload this for future so folks can look at it, and it is on that lead slide I have.
Yes, the archived version of this, so we're recording our webinar today, and the archived version will be on the Southern Fire Exchange YouTube page, probably within the next week. And we'll have that link on our last slide here in just a minute.
While we're waiting, I'll ramble a little bit. In my experience, I have been around enough to know and been involved in some cases where folks actually staged accidents and feigned injury so they could sue the burner and hoping that rolling the dice would get them the lottery. And there's an awful lot of unscrupulous lawyers out there that'll put minimum effort into something and see what it brings. Because, as you know, agencies and some companies have deep pockets.
It looks like we've had two questions come in, both with regard to the PB Piedmont. The first one from John Mason is, Dale, do you know if PB Piedmont is available for download from the internet? And I believe Jennifer Evans had included a link earlier in the chat that maybe we could Jen, if you want to type that in for us, that would be great.
Yes, it is available. I know it's available on the Georgia site, and you can access it either going to University of Georgia and then looking at their climate group, and it's called SHREMAC, and Southern something. But anyway, you can get through it there, or you can go right to the Georgia Forestry Commission and access it that way. And both of those links I've got in one of the previous slides up there, so they are available to you.
Okay, and Jennifer just put a link down in the chat box too for everyone.
Yeah, that's the SHREMAC link. Yeah, it is really an excellent tool to use for residual smoke, but it isn't going to do a bit of good for your smoke column. And I use V-Smoke to look at that, and I believe Scott Goodrick is going to talk about V-Smoke here in a couple of weeks. And they've been working on it and updating it and trying to improve it, so I'm probably going to listen to that one too and learn a few things.
Okay, and then an additional question about PB Piedmont from David Godwin was, is it a GIS tool or a web-based tool for smoke modeling?
I'm sure it's a web-based. Well, I say that because I'm guessing. How's that? I do not know. All I know is I can access it pretty easy, and it works really neat.
Okay, our next question is, does a historical database exist for prescribed burn acres in the southeast? And if so, how reliable are the data?
Now that's a loaded question. There is no reliable historical database. The 2011 survey that the Coalition of Fire Councils published in 2012 is the best that we have. Having said that, I just happen to have a commentary published in the, and I'm blowing my own horn here, in Forestry Source, where I complain about the Nifty fire site, which is garbage, bluntly. I can't tell you how it is with wildfire, but prescribed fire, I wouldn't use it. It's worthless. You can get good, accurate, historical prescribed fire data from Florida. I believe Georgia has it, and there's probably some other states that have it. And the only way to find out is give them a call and see if they'll work it up for you.
Okay, great.
But just as an example, NIFSI in 2011, I believe, said that all 50 states burned 2 million acres. And both Florida and Georgia alone burned over 3 million. So, you know, these two states suggest that NIFSI's report was off by, 30% or something like that.
Okay, if anybody else has additional questions or comments, we have about 10 minutes left with Dale. So if you want to go ahead and type them into the chat. We'll try to get them answered for you.
I see that John Mason says the link provides information but no download. Worst case scenario, John, is simply send an email to Dan Chan, C-H-A-N, Georgia Forestry Commission, and he can hook you right up with that. Or if you're with the feds, you can email Scott Goodrick in Athens, Georgia, part of the Southern Research Station, and he'll be able to get you hooked up pretty easy too.
And Dale, did you say that you had a link on one of your slides
I
for
do.
PBPD? Do you want me to go back and try to find that?
Yeah, in fact, I think I can tell you which slide it is.
Okay.
It's probably somewhere around, let's try slide, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Okay. I
Not
might
that
let
one.
you flip through. Okay. Maybe I'll let you flip through here
Okay.
and see if we can easily locate that before we sign off. And if anybody is going to be leaving the webinar early, we do have a short survey. The link will be on the next slide, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat box now. So if you could just take a couple of minutes, it's only about 6 or 7 questions, I think, to let us know how we did today and how we can improve for future webinars. That would be great. Okay, so it looks like Jennifer Evans gave us another link, but again, there's no download there. So we'll see if we can get that taken care of before we sign off. And then Karsten has another question. Could we possibly also see the link to the mentioned Blue Ribbon panel report? And I think that was more toward the end. So
What I'll, Annie, all I can tell you, it was on the slide I uploaded, but I don't see
oh,
it.
okay. Okay, I'm going to see if we can get to the Blue Ribbon URL, which was more toward the end. And Zach also had a comment here that I'll just read out for us. Part of the public notification process before burn should definitely include local politicians like county and city council members. They are often the first people contacted by their constituents when the public sees smoke. I don't know if, Dale, if you have any additional comments you want to add regarding that. Craig has also agreed with Zach on that.
Annie, to be honest, I wasn't paying attention with you. I was trying to
Oh,
find out where I was going
okay.
to.
I just read Zach's comment there aloud. Um, so I'll let you read it. And if you have any response to Zach, we can discuss that. And I'm also going to put the Blue Ribbon URL here in the chat box.
Yeah, it's about slide, I don't know, 45 or 40, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I got that one.
Oh, huh. Here is the link that I was looking for. It was further along than I thought.
And so which link are we looking for here to get to this is for the PB Piedmont?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, and your
can you
worst.
tell us which link?
Yeah, I do not know whether it's available on the Florida site or not. It is available on the SHREMAC, but I gather from the comments they can see it, but they can't download it.
Right.
So if
So
you
how
go to
about
the
if,
second
sorry, go ahead.
bottom, which is www.gfc.state.georgia.us, and when you get on that site, just ask the question. You might be able to direct it to Dan Chan, C-H-A-N, and he'll be able to help you.
And we can also do a little investigation here after the webinar and then post something up on the Southern Fire Exchange What's New page and maybe through our Twitter and email lists since it's of interest to a lot of folks. Okay, so if anybody else has questions, go ahead and type them in. If not, if we don't see anything in the next couple minutes, I am going to go ahead and go to our final slide, if that's okay with you, Dale. So I'll try to get us
Yeah,
there.
here's that.
Okay.
Whoops.
Oops. Sorry, I did that. Oh no. I'm sorry. I was moving ahead of you.
Where the blue. Yeah.
The blue ribbon. Okay. Yeah, that's a few of the links up. I included that in the box. So I hope folks can find that there. And we just have a few minutes remaining, so we want to thank Dale for a great presentation and everyone for your participation and your thoughtful comments and questions. And we hope that this webinar has been useful in your fire management and fire research programs. We have a short survey, as I mentioned. It's only a few questions. If you could take a couple minutes after the webinar to complete it, you can click the link that's right here on this slide. And if you'd like to be informed about future webinars that we have or future programming, you can either sign up for our email list, check out our website, or visit our Facebook and YouTube and Twitter pages. So if we get any further questions, we can answer them with the couple minutes we have remaining. And if not, then thank you so much, and we appreciate everyone being here today.